Hey, what's up? Enjoying your blended family. You are in for a treat today because I have the author of What to Expect When You Weren't Expecting. And I know some of you are like, wait, is that movie or is that one book that I got when I was pregnant? Like, this is a new book written specifically for you that are stepmoms. So get ready because in just a minute, I am going to introduce you to Jyl Barlow. If you haven't met her already, she is hilarious. When you read her book, you get to experience her sense of humor as she is talking through the situations that she basically had to learn the hard way as they were raising their blended family. So we'll get to that right after this.
When we first became a step family, just like you, we didn't quite know what we were getting into.
Scarlett and Randall Tandy here from Enjoying Your Blended Family, and we have been a blended family for over 15 years. And not only did we have to figure out how to handle the day-to-day struggles that come with being in a step family, about 7 years in, our biggest fear happened and each of our kids went to go live with their other parent.
We went through seasons of zero connection with each one of our kids, and we had to get really creative on ways to reestablish and reconnect those relationships.
And through prayer and becoming very intentional, God restored our family in true God-like fashion and made it better than we could have ever imagined or hoped for.
So God has called us to help other families do the same thing, to make those connections. So if you're looking for stronger relationships, deeper connections, and more communication, then we believe it truly starts with being intentional and creating these fun opportunities in our family.
Click the link so that you can get quick access to the process that we use to help you find common interests in your family so that you can be more intentional on spending time with your kids, your spouse, and your family as a whole.
We believe you can take the step out of step family and create a blended family that you truly enjoy.
You can find our podcast on Enjoying Your Blended Family on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And while you're sitting there, go ahead and follow us on social media.
So when you have more fun, you'll see less problems.
All right, so we're back and I have Jyl with us here now. And if you're watching on the YouTubes, I have the book up right here. I just love it. I love the pink. Can't really see it as much with the lighting, but I love the pink and the brightness and the fun of it. And Jyl, before we get into like me asking you the questions that I have devoured from this book that I've been binging, could you just tell us a little bit of your current blended family dynamics? Like, how long y'all been married? Who's in the house? Who's not in the house? Where y'all from?
Yeah, so I was actually living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I met my husband who was living outside of Richmond, Virginia, and we met at a work meeting in North Carolina and hit it off as friends. Obviously then it moved past friendship. I knew that he had children, but I really was naive in thinking that if I did marry him, they would just be kind of this weekend part of his life, even though he told me over and over that that wasn't how it would work out. So when the kids were 7 and 10, that's when I moved from North Carolina to Virginia, and kind of when I started jumping feet first into the life of blended family. Currently, my eldest is 20. My gosh, she's 21, and she's a sophomore. Nope, she's not. She's a junior in college. And I have an 18-year-old who's wrapping up his senior year of high school right now. So we are living in Virginia. We're excited. It's strange to be nearing the empty nest part because the last 10 years have, as we say, it's been like a marriage on steroids. We've done it all in 10 years, what most people do in 30.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna like get your hopes like be a dream crusher or anything. But well, in our family, of course, we're a blended family, so things are all kinds of crazy in our household. And we went through a period of time that the kids didn't live here, and that was during their teenage years. And we mourned that. Then we reconnected with the kids again, and as they were ending their high school years and into their young adult-ing life, we can't get them out of the house. Whoa,
No. Your house sounds really nice. I want to come there.
Like they are here for dinner. I remember
Yeah.
a friend in high school. She would go to her mom and dad's to eat dinner. She was married and going to her mom and dad's to eat dinner every night. And I'm like, girl, you are married and you're supposed to be at your house. And she's like, why would I give up on free food? And why would I pass on that? And so she would go, and that's what my kids now. My son's like, "What are you cooking tonight?" And they come over
That's
here,
so
they
funny.
eat dinner, they bring the grandbaby, and we try not to complain. But and then my oldest, she just moved back in. We thought it was going to be for a short season, but her roommate ended up liking where she was at, and so didn't want to move. So now she's with us for however long, and truly trying to enjoy whatever it is, because we missed out on that during the years
Yeah.
we would have been raising all three of our kids as teens. And so now we've had almost a month with all of them in the house, except sleeping hours, but here all the time. And so, not to burst your bubble, but just be
No,
prepared.
I mean, I can think of myself. And when I went off to college, I went 20 minutes away so that I could come home, for laundry and dinners. So our first child is in another state. So she's had her bags packed since kindergarten. But
Okay.
that second one's going to be tricky because he does want to go local and he's very in tune with any chatter we have about, moving to a smaller home or moving to a different state. So I think he's going to be tricky.
Okay. So you're already prepared for that.
I'm a little bit prepared. It's nice. This year's like our sweet spot because he's old enough to drive himself to the hospital if something happens. He's old enough to take care of the pets if we go away on the weekend. So my husband and I are trying to take advantage of that because as soon as he leaves for college in September, we're like, oh gosh, we're going to have to be responsible for the whole house ourselves.
Yes. Okay, so I want you to take us back. As I was reading your book, for one, I loved your husband's like forward is that what it's called, right? In the beginning
Yeah,
of
the forward.
the and just even his, like, y'all must laugh a lot because both
We
of
do
y'all
laugh.
have such a great sense of humor, and just the way that he expressed the forward in there. Like, I mean, definitely if y'all are listening or watching today, like, get your book so that you can hear the stories for yourself. Hopefully she'll have an audio version out soon enough, because I'm more of an audio person than I am able to find time to sit and read. But this is definitely something, if you're in this season of starting up a step family, and or also in the middle of it, and sometimes even just me just having getting a lot of confirmation being on the other side of it. I just love hearing stories and how it all comes together. So I want you to take us back to that day where you thought this was going to be that 50-50 kind of relationship that they were going to have. And you talk in the book about this moment where that all changed. And what got me is how you talked about y'all acted like everything was normal. Y'all
Yeah.
didn't, you just kept on going, and I'm sure you had your reasons and you thought it was like wise, like at the time,
Yeah.
protecting the kids' heart and mind. But then looking back, you had different thoughts. So can you tell us a little bit more about that day?
That day was kind of crazy. And yeah, it's funny. I've read, because I am doing the audiobook right now, I'm essentially reading the whole thing again. So it's, the fourth or fifth time that I've read it cover to cover. Each time I read it, it's different for me. I can't wait to read it again in 5 years and see, what I think of these times. But when I came to live with this family, my husband did tell me over and over prior that his ex-wife, the kid's bio mom, would not be a prominent part of their lives. He's so kind, and he says, it's just not her thing. She just has never been a real, you know, like lovey-dovey mom. I want to do the soccer games, but I still couldn't imagine that that was really how it was going to pan out. And I'm super, I guess, naive in that I just was like, no, it's going to work out the way I want it to work out, which is I'm going to live with this wonderful man, and on the weekends his kids will come over. He In the initial custody agreement, it was a 50-50 split, but it was the craziest schedule. And I tell everybody, do not get one of these crazy schedules, because it was like 2 days at our house, 3 days at her house, 3 days at our house, 2 days at her house. So nobody ever knew what was happening. And then when she had some legal troubles and ended up losing custody, like overnight, all of a sudden we had two kids. They got on the bus in the morning from her house. The school put them on the other bus to come to our house, and that was it. They lived with us. And why we acted like nothing was wrong probably came directly from total panic and just trying to be casual and, hey, this is what, whatever, we can handle this. And what I wish we could have done, or wish we had done, is I wished we had recognized that the kids know all the time when something is off, even at, 7 or 8 years old for my son, and even, 10 years old, of course, for our daughter. They knew something was wrong. We never even gave them the chance to grieve the loss of their stuff because they had things in their mom's apartment that they lost. We were just in panic mode of, we've got to just make this our house a home. And, we kind of forgot about their past, which is something I wish I could go back and change and just, ask them what they loved about their old bedroom, or what they loved about living with their bio mom, or, what kinds of things did they want to have in their new bedroom that would make them feel like it's home, instead of just, rushing to the store to get beds and comforters and, all the things.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Right.
I could totally see me doing exactly what y'all did. Like, okay, we want to make this as normal as possible. So we're just gonna act like it's just another weekend that they would have normally been with us, kind of
Right.
thing. And then but not have those conversations. And my son still, and he's 23, fixing to turn 24, will bring up things that he has lost over the years because of different, and they had similar situations with their other side of the family where homes were a little more temporary,
Right.
and stuff was more temporary, cars were more temporary, phone numbers
Yeah.
were more temporary, all of that kind of like easy come, easy go. And so there are situations that, where he's lost like my Pokemon cards, and he was
Oh yeah.
probably like 17 when that happened. Like,
But I think of those days afterwards, and I'm a doer, if there's a problem, I'm like, I'm on it. And I spent so much time calling the sheriff or calling the landlord to try to get in there to get their stuff, because I thought that was how I was going to be the hero. When what I really should have done is just set that all aside and just give the kids a hug and just tell them it was going to be okay, and that hey, no, I did not know what I was doing, but we were going to figure it out.
yeah. And especially like you explain in the book so well, like you had come from a life of not really seeking out a relationship with a man that has children or marrying and any of that. You were enjoying the life that you had, but you fell in love with this man and this came along with it. And so you definitely thought, I love how you explain that you're like, I got this. Basically,
Yeah,
like,
it'll be fine.
I've never done this before, but how hard could it be, kind of thing. And so you talk about your mother-in-law, and I'm assuming because you wrote it in your book, it's okay for us to talk about the topic
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
you call her your monster-in-law, and you talk about Grandmageddon. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Yes.
So tell us, because I know that that is a huge struggle in a lot of step families, and we've heard it from different perspectives too, even from the grandparents' perspective of being so involved with the kids' lives because they've had to step up their game and they're not wanting to see it. As a grandma now, I completely understand this. They don't want to see their kids suffer, and definitely don't want to see your grandkids suffer. But she was behind the scenes manipulating some things. My mom did some similar stuff that I found out years later that she was doing and planting a lot of seeds that my kids actually left and went to go live with her because of the way that she would talk about things. So can you tell us a little bit just about that, like relationship dynamics that you have and how y'all really came to that Grandmageddon moment and how it was actually freeing when you finally got to that point?
Yeah, and again, this is, hindsight's a wonderful tool. I can look back now and see why my mother-in-law acted the way she did. Her upbringing was that everybody lived together. I mean, at times her whole family lived in the same house, like sisters, kids, husbands. So, and I didn't know that until years later. Her sister, so my husband's aunt, lives with her kids and takes care of their children. So when my husband got divorced from his wife, his mother just assumed that they would all come live with him and she would take on that same role of being the grandmother raising the children, because that's what had been happening for generations in her family. I didn't know that when we kind of dove into this. And we've obviously done a lot of therapy. So now I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. She also saw how damaging the divorce was to the kids and saw how damaging their bio mom was in the process of that divorce. Again, giving her some grace, you just don't know until you're going through it. And she really just felt like her role was to rescue the kids. So when my husband brought this new girl into town from a different state, she was not interested in him having another relationship, in someone else living with the kids, and certainly not someone acting as, another mother to her grandchildren. So we battled for years, and this is going to sound a little bit like I'm full of, people like me, they get along with me, like I'm easygoing, and I could not figure out how to make this woman like me. So we hit every emotion on the bingo board, where I would just be so upset with her. I'd be frustrated with her. I'd be sad because I really wanted a mother-in-law to love me. And I'd mostly just feel like I was a failure in her eyes when it came to being a wife and a mother to the kids. And as someone who already questioned my abilities to raise children, it was her attitude toward me that really just kept like crushing that down and making me feel like I was never going to get it. And at times I just felt like maybe I was the worst person in the world to be around these kids. Even though I was like busting my chops every day to do what I thought was best for them.
Because the mother-in-law position is already a rough one for a lot of people, but then also it sounds like she kind of morphed the bio mom perspective in with her mother-in-law role, because she was taking on that what should have been a grandma role, but she was taking it on as that mother role as well. It's just an unhealthy place because it's unnatural, right? It's not how
it was very unnatural. And I don't know, I think, to this day, she's still working through the idea that it was best for them not to move in with her. It's tricky. I mean, she is a smothering person for sure. She's on high alert all the time when it comes to kids. We get along better now, but she is still very much on high alert. And she tends to live in the past and only see them as these wounded children, of a decade ago, and they're not anymore. And I think one of the things, that I write about in my book is when there is a divorce, it's not just the four walls that are affected, it's that extended family. It's the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, and, what happens to the relationship, that the spouses have with the in-laws. Where does that go in a divorce? Where does it go at the holidays? So it was easy to miss all that until I just, had these aha moments where I'm like, oh gosh, like there's this whole other family that was affected by this divorce and by the custody and by, the world being thrown up in the air.
Yeah, and people have completely different perspectives, because like Randall, my husband now, his is like, you cut the ties, it's done. Like there's no reason to have any relationship there. At least that was his perspective. He has grown a lot, especially. And then with my ex-husband, yeah, I cut the ties with my ex-husband, and we really couldn't ever get along after that to be able to be around each other. But his family loved me. It broke their heart that our relationship ended. Yeah. And so even though we weren't like doing all the holidays and stuff together, which they would have, and they would have invited Randall over as well. Like they always would ask about him. Those were still my nieces and nephews when the relationship ended. Is like, just because I'm not your technical aunt anymore, like I'm still like in your lives. And so they still call me their Tia Scarlett, because they still see me as that. Yeah. So there's the different perspectives, even in your new marriage, of like what is expected and what's not expected when it comes to the outside. But then you also don't want to insert yourself into a place where this new relationship can't take off, because there's this haunting of the ex that's still, lingering. So it came to a moment though where your mother-in-law came and like had a sit down with you.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. And it was only 2 years ago that she came in, and I actually thought everything was finally fine. We hadn't heard a lot from her. So there wasn't the phone calls every day saying, what's going on over there. but she came in and sat on the couch across from me, my husband at my side, and did ask him, basically said it's either her or me. You can either have a relationship with me, your mother, or you can have a relationship with Jyl. And obviously he chose me. What's funny is the kids were sitting at the top of the stairs and heard this. So they were packing my bag, not because they wanted me to leave, but they thought I was going to be so upset that I would need a night off, which I do sometimes take a night off and just go to like the hotel at the mall or whatever. Um, it was so freeing for me because that moment made me realize that I was never going to do right in her eyes and that I literally could be Mary Poppins, you know, Mother Teresa, all wrapped up in one, and that I needed to just release it, stop trying to please her and worry about myself and my family. So, ironically, the conversation that should have upset me the most, it was just such a release.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to say that. Like when you were saying that it was like such a good thing, I was thinking like because he stood up and he was like, maybe saying something or cut off the relationship. I was expecting it to go somewhere different, but then when you were saying like it was so freeing, and I was like, I guess, and maybe that's what made me think of her in this like more of a bio mom grandma kind
Yeah.
of morphed thing, because that's where I had to finally get with the other side, like with my stepdaughter's bio mom, is that it doesn't have anything to do with me. Like
Right.
it's the role that I represent. Like I'm
Right.
not going to ever make her happy. I could be doing all the right things and she's upset with me because she doesn't get to do all of these things that
Right.
I'm doing. Or I could be mean and do the wrong things to her daughter and she's upset because I'm mistreating her daughter. Like, and I had to get to a point of realizing I can't, because I'm a people pleaser, I can't make her like me. And I wanted to
Right.
so bad. I want to have that step co-parenting kind of relationship. And sometimes it just isn't in the cards because everybody has to want to be
Right.
on that team. And you can't force people to like you when you are in a position that, I mean, maybe one day, and I don't, I never want to like discredit that it can't happen because I do
Right.
believe that anything is possible, but it takes a lot of self-growth and self-awareness. And that is on me. Like I will admit where I have made a lot of mistakes in our step family and me being a stepmom and the places that I shouldn't have been doing things that I was doing. And, but other people have to acknowledge those things
Yeah.
as
And
well.
and being a writer didn't help our relationship. I've been a writer. I was a writer before I published the book, but this was the first book I published. Uh, so I blog, and my blog started switching 5 years ago from, oh, my cat's cool, to, wow, I have stepchildren and I'm not sure what I'm doing. And that was very upsetting to her that I would write about her grandkids publicly. No matter how many times, we told her that the kids know everything I write. Everything I write is the truth. I do my best not to lie or skew it, too much. And the kids always are able to say, like in the book, they went by different names in the book. They have that right. So, and that's, one thing we try to implore with my mother-in-law is that everything in there is true. The kids are welcome to read it whenever they want. We don't hide anything. So they were fine with it. Why wouldn't she be fine with it? So it helped me realize that the issue wasn't, like you said, it wasn't an issue with me. It was more of an issue that she had internally that she would have to work out before she would be able to accept anybody as the kid's mom besides herself.
Yeah. So y'all's relationship now, like y'all are in relationship, just not in like a like fairy tale relationship.
It we are going through another year of transition. Suddenly things actually are good and peaceful good, and I don't really know what changed. I keep telling my husband, I think you might have read the book. She'll never admit it, but unfortunately she's not written very well. But writers often say that if you don't like the way you were written, be a better character.
Mm.
So she might have seen something she didn't like about herself in there. But I'm a very forgiving person, and like you, I have my door's always open. I've never shut it permanently on anyone. So, right now she really is coming back into my life very slowly. And I'm very, a little bit like,
Cautious.
I'm a little bit cautious, a lot of bit cautious, but I've had my own mother's having some health issues, and it's been great timing to have my mother-in-law kind of step into the pieces where my own mother can't anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be just praying for you guys as well. Just that will come to a place where, especially when you need it, and for the kids' sake as well, because the thing with we think, oh, they get 18 and now they're off on their own, but then they start reproducing and you start having birthday parties and holidays, and
Yeah.
it's not let me just survive till they get to 18, because right now the season that we're in, it's an incredible season, and I am grateful that we stuck it out to be where we're at now, and that the relationships, even in our exes sides, that family can come together when family needs to come together, and it
Yeah.
not be just closed doors in those places. So I have a few more things that I want to talk about, and I want to make sure we get to the end, because we're close to the end of the book, because it's my favorite part. So
Oh,
so there's a couple things I want to talk about before, because these are hot topics when it comes to step families. And so I want to talk about chores and
God.
your
Yeah.
perspective on the chores, because this was a big thing for, I have two children that are diagnosed ADHD, and they were like hurricanes in our
Mhm.
house. And it was so hard, because no, I didn't want to be cleaning up off after them all the time, but I also wanted to have a house that I could live in. And Randall is very type A personality. Everything has a place, and he doesn't like for things to be sticky or stepping on stuff and all of that. But yet nobody wants to be cleaning 24/7 either. And so I loved how you talked about his perspective in that, from what he came from, and how guarded he was when it came to y'all getting the kids involved in helping, because that is
Yeah.
key. I think they should, but it's when you're in a step family, it's not as easy as let's make my chore chart and these kids need to do their part. There's all of this other baggage that comes along with it.
Yeah. And we had a ton of baggage in that area, because that was one of the areas where their bio mom struggled, was keeping house in general. So the kids, which my husband did not know, because he did travel a lot toward the end of their marriage. So he did not know that when he was on business trips, the kids were having to clean the house, make the meals, put the laundry away. So when we moved in together, and I went from being, a single woman from Raleigh, to now I have three other people to take care of. My husband thought, oh, okay, so now you'll be in charge of all that stuff, the meals, the cleaning, and I was not prepared to take it on. And it was so overwhelming that I immediately was like, oh no, like the kids are going to help as well. That's how I grew up, was you get allowance for doing chores. So there was a ton of pushback. Admittedly, I came in a little too hot, because that was one of the things I wanted to change right away. And I probably should have given it at least, 6 months to a year. Um, but once we kind of bounced all over the place, and then got it down to start small, start simple, give lots of encouragement, understand that, I'd say probably when they're under the age of 10, that they'll do the chores, but you will have to probably go back and redo several things. An 8-year-old changing kitty litter is fantastic if you like kitty litter all over the floor.
I still get it all over the floor.
Right, exactly. So if you're expecting, a 10-year-old to put all the dishes in the dishwasher, you're going to go back and do the Jenga yourself. What happened though was my kids started to feel ownership of their own space, which kind of was a great thing to see. My daughter, who's in college right now, her dorm room, it's not like I'm OCD myself, so her room is not like my standard, but she it's organized, it's clean. She knows when there's dust on the counters, eventually she should wipe it off. So it was nice, because it gave them some boundaries, it gave them some ownership. nobody likes to do chores, nobody likes to go to work, but it's given them a sense of responsibility for where they are and some onus of their own lives, which during the divorce they definitely felt like they didn't have that.
Yeah, and again, in a normal family situation, what you're expecting is absolutely normal, but we're not in a normal situation, and they do come with this, from their past, what they were experiencing and having to take on that load. Because yeah, they do need to do chores, but they also are children and what that should look like. And so it does sound like what y'all did in your own way, and maybe kind of wrong timing, or coming in, like you said,
Yeah.
coming in hot, but it actually prepared them. Because like we kind of did the opposite. I wanted so bad to teach the kids to do chores, but we would come up with, because I'm a creative, I would come up with all these different, I would take pictures and frame it, and here's a checklist and all these kind of reward systems. But the kids would be gone every other weekend, or the
Right.
seasons, they would be busy with soccer and basketball and dance. And we would, as soon as we would get into a routine, then something would change in our custody or whatever. And it was just like, we could never get a hold of anything like tangible that would work. And so they're struggling now, and each of the kids in their own way has found their boundaries of what clean and looks like and doesn't look like.
Right. That's
And
one of the, oh, sorry. I think
no,
that's
go
one of
ahead.
the, well, and I'm thinking more about it as we're talking, is when they're going back and forth, and especially if the other parent doesn't give them any responsibilities, which was our case, then all of a sudden you're the house that is the one that not that they don't want to spend time there, but they know when they come there, they are going to have responsibilities and bedtimes, and, you know, chores is one of those things. Because my husband was trying to, he had so much guilt that he carried with him from the divorce. So anytime something came up that would make the kids uncomfortable, and chores was one of those things, he would immediately push back and say, we can't do that. Like, that'll make them upset. They've been upset enough already in the last, year, or the last 3 years, or the last 5 years. Where I was the same as you, where I'm like, I can't do this all myself. I'm working full time. I'm trying to figure out how to be a wife. I'm trying to figure out how to be a mom. I need a team and not to just be the sole, doer of the things. But then you do come across as the naggy stepmom who's, thank you, Disney. We appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it is tricky. And like I said, I approach it a little too aggressively. So, hindsight.
Yeah, now you know. Was it a
Now you know.
conversation that y'all had to have, like where it finally, or it's just over time, eventually just became normal?
We had a lot of conversations with our therapist about it. She was the one that told my husband, there needs to be responsibilities and there needs to be consequences if they aren't taken care of. Which for him, it was like he doesn't like that word consequences. Now he does. Now he understands that consequences are a necessity. But that was actually something he inherited from his mother, is that no, children should never have consequences anywhere at any time. And then I'm not talking about like anything terrible. It would be, oh, you're losing your devices, nothing serious. I mean, they are serious to an 8-year-old, but
Yeah. I mean, that's just life, though. There's cause and
yeah.
effect. You do this, this happens. So it's a healthy way of teaching them what those consequences look on a smaller scale. Okay,
Mhm.
so next I want to talk about your nap when they nap mentality, and the
Yes.
vacation when they vacation. Because I just loved how you put that as well. Because there's so much guilt that comes in a step family of, especially when we never had ours babies. But like my stepdaughter would go away for pretty much the whole summer because her mom lived in another state. And so then it's like, you don't want to go on trips or do this when these kids are here, or you don't want to go on a trip by yourself because the kids are missing out. And so just tell us a little bit about your philosophy with the vacation when they vacation.
Well, because of the issues that their bio mom has with responsibility and follow through, it was tricky to do anything when the kids were with her, because we always felt like we had to be here just in case. And that's kind of how we lived our life for several years, was, just in case. Now, it was earned. There was a lot of times when the kids were with their mom that we had to swoop in and rescue them and bring them home. So it it wasn't until they were in their mid-teens that we started feeling like, okay, if they're with their mom for the weekend, we can go away for the weekend. And then eventually they went on a week-long trip with her. And while we were, I think, yeah, honestly, I just think it was the best thing to do, because we were going to sit around our house and be anxious the whole time, or we could go be anxious at the beach. So we chose the beach. Um, it's hard, because you think, oh, I'm at the beach making these memories, and my stepkids aren't here, or my husband, my kids aren't here, and it's okay though. It's okay to move forward with your life and do things and enjoy yourself, and the guilt it'll become smaller each time, you complete you complete the mission of relaxing. So I mean, it's a tricky thing to start doing, but if you can do it, it's really good for your psyche, especially as a couple, because when the kids are grown and out of the house, it's that couple that, you've got to preserve the marriage all the time, because that's what's going to be left.
Yes, and it wasn't like y'all weren't doing trips. Y'all were doing trips a lot, right? As a
Yeah,
family, always,
as a
like you
family,
said.
yeah.
But y'all weren't going and doing these things yourself, because y'all had a lot of the similarities we did. We took on the bulk. We had full custody of all three of our children
Mhm.
for the majority of the time. And sometimes when their dad was doing good, then they were doing every other weekend. Sometimes when he wasn't, it was 2 years before, they
Yeah,
were gone again. And then with my stepdaughter being her mom in another state, like for the most of the time we had the kids. So that wasn't really like we weren't going away for couples retreats or weekends like that.
right.
And so I love how you talk about that, being able to go and spend that time together with each other. And y'all are doing it as a family, but you also, it's very important. We talk about that a
It's
lot
so
here.
important.
You have to preserve the marriage. You have to put your marriage first, in a sense, because some people don't like to hear that. They're like, you can't neglect children. They can't take care of themselves. Like, nobody's saying neglect your kids, but you have to prioritize this marriage, or your kids are going to suffer, because they're going to have another relationship that's torn apart,
Right.
because there's going to come a time where you and your spouse are not, on the same
Right.
page, and this marriage isn't working if you do not prioritize that. So I love how you said to do that when they're going, like when they're on their time, then use that time wisely to go have your time.
And I think, two things. One, if you're neglecting yourself, then you are neglecting your kids, because you're a better wife, you're a better mom, you're a better stepmom if you're healthy, mentally healthy, if you're physically relaxed. I think a lot of people think of these trips as like go big or stay home. It's not that at all. Our favorite place to go is at the Short Pump Mall, which is 20 minutes from us, and there's a Hyatt on the corner of it, and we go stay there 2 nights. We are close enough to home that if there is an issue, we can be, the kids wouldn't even know that we came from somewhere else than our home. But we're also somewhere where I'm not sitting around thinking, oh gosh, I should probably do the laundry. And my husband's not sitting around thinking, oh, I need to fix that broken piece of wood on the porch, because we're at a hotel and all we really can do is relax and chat. And one of the things I recommend is having like kid-free conversations. Pretend you don't have any. It's okay, they'll still be there when you get back. But talk about things that don't involve the kids. If someone brings up the kids, act like you never heard of them. Um, if you can't do that at all, I absolutely recommend having a safe space in your home, which I know is like one of those like words that are everywhere right now. But we had to stop having conversations about the kids or the ex-wife in our bedroom.
Mm.
I knew, I know now that if as soon as we cross that threshold, like that's my safe space. There's no talk of children, there's no talk of custody, there's no talk of alimony. It's just my husband and I.
Wow. I haven't ever heard of that, like anybody having a safe space. We have tried to take the kids off the table as far as conversation, and we're like, we'll take work and the kids off the table. We're like, we don't know what to talk about.
I
And
know.
that's really when we realize we have a problem, because we would spend all of our time talking and complaining really about
Right.
situations that were out of our control. And it was doing is fueling this fire inside of us, instead of us being able to enjoy each other's company. And so we had a therapist recommend to me, like, why don't y'all find something that's y'all's together
Right.
you can do? And that's really how it started as enjoying the moment, which has morphed into enjoying your blended family over time. But we were just trying to like, okay, well, what can be ours? And so we created a blog and a travel and all this stuff that we would start talking about, and we would daydream about going on trips and stuff. So
Yeah.
I love that advice that you're giving, is have a safe space where you're like, okay, here we don't talk about this.
Yeah. And it's not about like, being marital. It's just about, I mean, even today, right now, we use a ribbon on the doorknob. So if we're in a stressful time, the ribbon goes on the bedroom door. And then that's my reminder that, I'm not going to go in here and keep talking about all the negative stuff. We also buy, if you look on Amazon, there's conversation cards, which will get those out. And it's just question after question. What's your favorite vegetable? Do you like to tie your shoelaces or leave them loose, and why? So it's like all these, these questions that have nothing to do with your family. And those are great too.
Those we have started to dig into as we've met different people on Instagram, and they have different things. And they have brought up things in our marriage that we've been married 10 years. Now we've been married 15 years, but we started this probably a handful of years ago, that we have learned about each other that we had no idea, because it just doesn't come up in regular conversation in regular life. And highly recommend. So thank you for that suggestion as well, because conversations you can go on Etsy, you can go on Amazon, you can, follow some accounts on Instagram, and they have that going. Make it a date. It used to be Date Crates by Jamie. She has on Etsy, she has some conversation cards that I just downloaded for Valentine's. They're like color coded to your Reese's Pieces, and me and Randall love Reese's Pieces. And so you just draw a card, whatever Reese's you pull out, then that's the card color that you pull from. And so just different things like that, just kind of keep it fresh. Okay, now to wrap up, because I just loved your story in there about your I love you text and your Hagrid moment that you had.
Oh, yes.
And for any step family, step moms, bio moms, whatever out there that is struggling through it, when you get to one of these moments, and I've had several now, over the years, but there's these moments where you see like, it was all worth it for this moment right here. And then hopefully over time, those moments come more often. Tell us, and they're two completely different stories. So let's start with the I love you text that you got from your stepdaughter.
My stepdaughter and I had a very, very hard time in her teen years. I mean, she just had so much anger that should have been directed toward her mom, but she wasn't ready to direct it to anybody except for me. I mean, so we had some epic battles, and we got to a point where we just were like, we just need to coexist until you go off to college. And so that's what we did. And it was a year before I got a text from her that said, I love you. And I just stopped and looked at it, and I realized it was in our family's text. So like other people saw it. And text, you can backspace all you want, right? Or put an LOL in there. And I waited for an LOL or anything. And no, it was just her saying that she loved me. And it was a year after probably we said anything nice at all to each other. So it was just, it was one of those moments where I felt like it was a springboard to like we were going to be okay. Like we were going to do it. And I tell people when you're in those tumultuous times, it seems like everything's going so fast and there's no way you're going to be able to slow down and fix it. But if you can slow down and just be patient and silent, unfortunately, sometimes that things will slow down again. And that it's in those spaces that the little pieces of relationship start to get back together. So that's that story.
Well, and just to give the magnitude, and I won't tell the whole story because I want y'all to go read the book, because she tells lots of different stories in the book of these different moments that they had in their family. And I think they're important when she shares her story, that we can see our stories in the midst of it, right? But this happened after her, and you are very clear in the book too, like you are her mom, you don't like the stepmom kind of thing. And I think that is exactly true, where this tension that she had, what's directed at you, would be in a typical mother-daughter dynamic, because that tends to happen in a lot of mother-daughter dynamics. but
Yeah.
you as stepmom were getting the brunt of it like a mom normally would, because she was safe. But yet, just to give y'all just a glimpse of how bad it was, like she
Oh,
had written an essay for her college applications, basically accusing you of child abuse and
yeah.
all of these awful things. And you just, in our motherly kind of way, happened to stumble upon this and read these words that she had said about you, painting just a completely false accusation, right?
Yes. Yeah. See, now it's been, we're doing so well that I forgot all about that. But yeah, it was that bad. It was shocking. And it was even more shocking when we sat in her therapist's office. And I mean, by then I wrote in the book how we had therapy every kind of therapy, every day of the week. We're in some office. That was in our family therapy session that I brought it up and said, you've accused me of being a child abuser. Like, that's serious. You told universities up and down the East Coast that you live with an abuser. And she stood her ground. That's what you are. That's what you do. And it wasn't true at all. And I didn't think we would ever come back from that. I didn't think I had the capacity of understanding it or forgiving her. And I didn't think that she would ever, I guess, I don't know
See
what
the
the word,
truth.
like, yeah, she would never see the truth. So that was right before, the therapist said, you guys just need to coexist in the house. And, we were doing the whole thing where I would text my husband and say, hey, can you tell, Amelia to empty the dishwasher? And it was just so stupid, but it was the only way we could have peace. So we went like that for a year. Now I started doing little things for her here and there because that's just how I am. And then that kind of led up to the I love you text. And I felt really good because I I did slow down and I was quiet and I just try to keep showing grace, showing grace. That's kind of been my motto this whole decade. And so I knew that I had chosen the right path. I could have chose anger. I could have made her go live somewhere else. I could have, there's a lot of different ways it could go. But seeing that text, I knew that the path that we went on was the right one.
Yeah, and I love how you said that it was COVID too and the lockdown that really, man, the thing that would make it so much more worse,
I,
right? Because now you're like forced and trapped. But that time that people had to, spend and lean on each other and really begin. So I could see where during that time y'all are having to learn to maneuver things a little bit
yeah.
differently. And as you were saying that, like it made my stomach drop, just this memory of us being in therapy, me and my daughter, my biological daughter, sitting in
Mhm.
therapy, and the counselor looked at her and said, "Can you think back to a time when things were good, when you had fun with your mom, when you
Mhm.
enjoyed her? Tell me about that." And my 16-year-old daughter looking across and she says, "I can't remember, not one. There hasn't been."
Yeah.
And she's the one that I poured all of my energy into because her and I would have so much fun together. I could plan all of her slumber parties and mother-daughter dates and all of these things like we enjoyed so much. And for her, in her mind, in her 16-year-old mind, she could not think of one good memory.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like heartbreaking. And it did take, during that time, she wasn't living at home with me and we were trying to work through some things. And it was actually court ordered for us to have counseling together because that's where we
Mhm.
were at. And it took, we began to look at pictures together, not like forcing her, like, remember this. But I would just create these moments where it began to like remind her of her past
Yeah.
because there's some things that you could be brainwashed in a sense of even by yourself, going down your own rabbit trails. Okay, so that was with your daughter. Now tell us about this Hagrid moment, your Harry Potter moment with him.
Yeah. This was just a small moment. It was not long after I moved here. My 7-year-old was super interested in the Harry Potter books, which are big books for a 7-year-old. But I told him, if you read the book, we'll watch the movie. That was kind of where we started bonding. And dang it, if that kid didn't read that book. And I love Harry Potter. This is not a complaint. So we sat down to watch the movie and I'm not a very touchy feely person. So I was still getting used to like little kids being I sound terrible. I was still getting used to little kids being near me and like they're grimy and sweaty and sometimes they smell. But they're better now. But we were sitting there and right at the beginning when Harry Potter and his family is on the island because they're trying to escape all the letters that are coming from Hogwarts. And then Hagrid comes and knocks on the door, knocks on the door, knocks on the door because he's there to rescue Harry Potter from the family that he shouldn't be living with. And as Harry's leaving in the rain and with this giant, I just hear this whisper out of my ear and it says, he says, "You're my Hagrid." And I said, I'm like, what, what'd you say? And he said, "You're my Hagrid." And then he held my hand, and that was, I, I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about it. I knew
I'm
immediately
tearing up. Yeah, and I already knew this was
I
coming.
knew what it meant, you know what I mean? But I didn't believe it happened. I mean, I knew it happened because I asked him twice. And I mean, it took me until I could sit down and talk to my husband and tell him what happened for me really to understand what he was saying. And it was such a big moment in my life. I mean, and it was at the beginning, and it gave me a responsibility that I needed. And I didn't know I needed that responsibility.
Yeah, and if you haven't watched Harry Potter, then go watch it or read it or whatever, so that
At
you
least up to that
understand.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, you understand like the magnitude of knowing now a little bit of Jill's background story of where the kids were coming from and the position that the role that she was playing in their life. And then also, I just love that it was something because we talk a lot about finding common interests. Like we've created this whole thing for you and your family members, for you and your spouse, and as a whole family. But for you to write out your things that you love, and then for your kids to do the same, or if they're not old enough, you're making the list for them, for your spouse doing that. And then find these areas where you do have things in common. And so
Right.
for you and him, y'all were able to find this common ground from the beginning. And I love how you challenged him to go and read the books because it is a lot. I just now started reading the book, and I know there's a lot of different beliefs and, Harry Potter and all this
Yeah.
stuff. I just started reading the books because it's actually because my stepdaughter has a sister, her biological sister from her mom's side, that we bonded over some things this last year, and we have a group text, and she was talking about some Harry Potter stuff and watching the movie and what have you. And I was like, you know what? I've never read the book. So I'm going to go back and read the book. And you really do pick up a lot more actually reading the book than going and watching the movie. So I was like, okay, I'm going to read the books and then we're going to have like a Harry Potter night or something
That's
at
cute.
some point because she'll come down and visit us and stay here with us now. Same for Riley's brother as well. And so when you can find these moments to bond and then create those moments, have them. Had you not challenged him in that way, had you not been willing to sit down and watch the movie, you would have never possibly experienced this moment, which was a glimpse of hope for the rest of your blended family, for y'all
Right.
holding on to that. And so you say in the book, I think you answer the question, but also at the beginning of the book, you state this like run. If you're thinking about being a stepmom or you're at the beginning stages, run. But then at the end, you kind of wrap it all up. So, and because I did have to skip through, I'm waiting for the entirety when you have the audio so I can
Yes.
just listen to it.
Yes.
But I don't know if you clarify it, but I think I know what your stance is. If you had to do it all over again, would you have chose a different life, or have you learned that through all of it, it's well worth it?
I don't know. I'm getting teared up, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I say I've done it because, we've grown two beautiful humans, and I did that, and I wouldn't, if I had run, I wouldn't, I wouldn't be sitting here today and saying like to other stepmoms who are in the mud and just feel like it's never going to be okay, and should I just leave? Like, no, it is worth it to get through it because of the stuff that we've been through. I think we're stronger than any traditional family on the planet. I think we have more, just more memories that are so important. I think we're so much tighter because we went through this battle together and we never gave up on each other.
Man. Okay. So I'm so glad that I asked. Yes. No, and it's so okay to cry, but that's what I want people to see, because when you live in a social media world and you're hearing a lot of things in these blended family, step family forums, and I had a TikTok that's kind of taken off here lately, and so many people on there saying, "Don't do it. It's not worth it. Leave. I already left. It's so my life is so much better." And you never know where your life story is going to go. I mean, you could have lived a completely different, beautiful life, had you not chose this, but this life that you have is so beautiful, and it is your story, and you've come in and you are that person. You are the mom. And that's what, regardless of what your beliefs are, I've had this moment that I've come with God here lately of like, for so long, I thought it was this broken family that we've been trying to put back together. And God has showed me like, how perfectly I have placed you exactly where I needed you to be. Had you not been here and been willing to step in this area, what could have taken place from there? And I do get the privilege of being called mom now. And that isn't, we don't put it all over social media because it does hurt feelings out there for other sides of the family. But when we're together, I'm the one that she is calling mom, and I get the honor of that, and the joy, and the just, oh, it's beautiful to be able to be in this place. And I wouldn't change it either, but there is a time in the life, oh, like, why did I choose this?
Yes.
So last thing is something we've been asking our guest on here. What is something that your family loves doing together? Like, what is something that y'all find some common ground and some joy, laughter, fun in your blended family?
So it's funny because this just came up like 2 days ago, and I have to look up the correct name of it, but I think it's called the International Yum Boxes.
Mm.
And it is, you get these boxes shipped from a company who collects all these snacks from a different country, and you get one a month. And so if it's France night, we will decorate the whole house, well, the kitchen, with the Eiffel Tower and a French flag, or whichever country we're doing that day. We cook a whole dinner together based on that country. And then we sit down, we go through all the snacks and we rate them, and we have a system. It is a night that we all look forward to. When our oldest is at college, we save the boxes till she comes home. So at Christmas, we did like 4 of them. It was like once every other day. That is something, I don't even know why we started doing it, other than I was like, sure, take my money. So it's just, that's a tradition in our house that we absolutely love. Dinner has not always been a peaceful meal because a lot of times it's when you discuss grades or, oh, the teacher called me today. So we had to make a conscious effort to switch our dinner table to this friendly place. And we are old fashioned. We still eat dinner at the dinner table, at least 5 days a week. So that's kind of been our thing. That's our little family. Like, we don't know anybody else. We don't know anybody else that does this, but we do.
Well, and you'll have to send me who y'all use
Yeah.
specifically, because and I'll share that in the show notes. I had been doing that with Take Me With You. They're on a pause right now, but they were doing something very similar, and I
Mhm.
just met them on Instagram, and so I started doing their travel boxes that started up during COVID, and we fell in love with learning about other countries we couldn't travel
That's
to
so
them at the
funny. Yeah.
time. And so we would watch these YouTube videos and cook the meals, and so our family really enjoys that well, and doing like a craft or an activity that goes with that country. So I enjoy that. And then someone has recently reached out to me about trying their thing. So I wonder if it's the same
It's called Universal Yums. So that's the
universal
one that we
yums.
do. We do. I
Okay.
will say, and I don't know, I'm thinking, one of the things that we started doing when I first moved here was date nights, which was terrifying to me because that meant every other week I had to take a kid on just the two of us dinner.
Oh,
So now
yeah.
I'm like, man, maybe everything we do revolves around food. But another thing that we all look forward to and still do, you know, quite frequently is just those dates, but the one-on-one stuff.
Well, and thank you for mentioning that, because again, that goes along with what we were saying. Like, we have a step family, like a jump start kit, whatever, which really
Mhm.
it's just a PDF that you print off, and you're coming up with these lists of things that you like, things that they like, things that you would like to try. And then you pick these date nights, you put them on the calendar. So I love that y'all made that a very practical thing for that blending process as well, for the individual dates that need to take place in your family, but then also as a family as a whole, trying new things, eating food, especially if you have a boy.
Yep.
That's for my son. I know that if I want to do something with him, mention food, and he'll make it a priority to
Yeah.
do that. So, and then last but not least, I know Amazon, I'm sure, right, is where you can get
Yes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. It's all the places.
all the things.
Yeah.
And I love that you personalized it for me. Like, I got a little handwritten thing in here and some little cards as well. Like, even the pens, like I have them laying around. So thank you so much for
You are so welcome.
my copy. Thank you for coming on and sharing your heart and being vulnerable. I know not everybody loves doing that, but I know the listeners, when they hear the heart behind your message, it gives hope. And that is our goal here, is to leave. And that's what I read in your book as well. The very end, you were saying as well, is if I can help somebody else out there, just kind of cut some of the trials in half. So
I think just knowing that you're not alone it's so helpful. I felt very alone when I started this because there weren't all the socials, and there's certainly still no books at the library specific to stepmoms, but you have that one now, and then we're hoping to get the audiobook on Audible in the month of March, because then I can just go on vacation and forget about it. So you'll for my what is it called? The audio readers, which I didn't even know was a thing until you told me that.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, they have a name. Okay.
Yes, and I love it. And like I'm constantly listening to something. And so for me to get a physical copy, I want to get to a place where I am shutting off in the evening and I can sit and I can read. And I have this whole stack. And this one was sitting on the top. I have like 15 books that I want to read the physical copies to, but making that time, because when, like I said, the kids have just been here every single day. So
Yep.
I get my free time when I'm washing dishes, and I can just put in my audiobook, or I'm driving in the car. So let me know, and I will be forwarding that to everybody that I know, so that they can get their version of it as well. So thank you so much, Jyl.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for the time of coming here and just pouring your heart out. But thank you. I know writing a book is not easy. And the time and dedication that it takes to get all of that and reliving all of it again. And then just the editing and process and everything. So for you to stick with it all the way through. And I hear there's a second book coming out. Yeah. When can we expect that?
Eventually, I need to take a little break, but my long break will probably end up being a short break, so probably not too long from now.
Yeah, so go get the book, find Jyl on the social medias and follow her, and just see she has her hand in a lot of different things. So just going and just following along on her journey, you get to see how it all comes together. And B Fam, we thank you for just being faithful listeners. And I love your encouraging words, these different episodes that have been coming out, and y'all reaching out and telling me, like, thank you so much for covering this topic or this topic. Man, it just met me right where I was at. And so until the next one, just remember to enjoy your blended family. Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has been a blessing and encouraged your family journey.
Make sure you stay connected with us and join our weekly Blended Family newsletter. We send an email out every Friday morning full of support and encouragement.
And when you join, we also want to give you a free gift. So go get yours today. The link is in the show notes below.
Have an amazing day. Remember to enjoy the journey with your blended family, and we'll see you on the next episode.